Both our respondents, would the speakers like to have a moment to respond?
I thank you so much for your very insightful comments. So one thing about the using scientists versus everyday people, we actually did a test that, and we actually bring in another child, not another college child, closer to our high school age, and to bring in their struggle stories. We did not replicate the study.
I mean, everyday scientists.
Right, everyday scientist, we also have that, Johnson. We mocked up the Einstein story, but put a different name on that. And interestingly, depend on how you were perceived at the beginning. And another thing is that the reason we did a scientist to cure one problem only at the time is that these people are genius. They should not have any struggles. So if they're genius, they should not make mistake. So I try to tell them they do. They're just like us. So that's the goal. But I think we did another test right now. We're writing up the paper on Johnson versus Einstein. And interestingly, the Einstein group did the worst. It's all struggle story. Einstein group did the worst, and Thomas Edison did the second worst, did better than Einstein, and Johnson did the best. But that's not with students. That's in MTurk with the random adults. So these are all interesting questions to study. It may not replicate that well as John was talking about in many human variables.
I just had a quick comment there. I agree with you that, of course, regularizing science would be a very good idea. The fight, of course, is that the textbooks don't do that. The textbooks tell heroic narratives of geniuses doing this, that, and the other thing, and I think that's the battle that Xiaodong is waging in this case.
I think studying textbook to see what's out there, it will be very interesting as well.
Yeah. It would be great to change the textbooks. I agree, yes. I absolutely agree with you. Who said that? Where is she? Oh, there you go.
Historian of science, perhaps?
Liz, would you like to respond to either of our respondents' comments?
Yes. Well, I will start by looking at what happens at the welfare office and unpacking some of that failure. So very often the individuals are blamed for not having the resources, for not having education, for sort of failing in providing for their families. But if you look at it, there might be things that people didn't do, but it is more of a systemic or system problem in which people don't get the resources that they need. Sometimes they don't get opportunities to advance themselves. If they fail in school early, the chances that they will be able to sustain their families are sort of slim. So very often they become dependent on the system. The workers at the welfare office very often are in the same condition than the clients. And they are oppressed by the system, by the rules, how they provide the services, and so on. Now, both the clients and the workers are affected by decisions that are made higher up. They are made at the state level, they are made at the federal level. And the work of the worker is usually to communicate the bad news. You didn't qualify. But very often, they also do the work in a way that doesn't help people. And rather than trying to help, they are another, level of oppression. So I heard from women in New Hampshire, in the small town of Dover, who very often, when they went to the welfare office, they were in a program, in a transition program from welfare to work. And very often they heard from the workers, oh, you didn't bring the paperwork. And it was that they lost the paperwork. Or, you are lying because you are living with your boyfriend. But they used to do that in a way that that everybody could hear. So they were putting down the clients. So I will tell you quickly what the adult educator did. So they were in the adult education program, and the teacher gave the women a notebook where they could write their questions in preparation for their appointments at the welfare office. And they did. She also taught them to write down any decision that was being made at that encounter. And they did. And within 4 weeks, the dynamic of the welfare office began to change. The workers, rather than telling the women, you lost the paperwork, you are lying to me, they used to say, where is your notebook? Where do I have to sign? And we learned about that because there was a new participant in the program who came back and said, the most weird thing happened to me at the welfare office. I went because I had an appointment tomorrow, and the worker asked me, where is your notebook and where do I have to sign? So the others told them what they were doing. And what they were able to do was to change the dynamic of that encounter. Now, the workers in that place were not doing the education, which is something that we like to see happening. It was an outside source. It was the adult education program. But what I see is that in any encounter that people have, in any opportunity, people learn how to advocate for themselves, prepare with their questions, think about the potential decisions that will be made. We will be looking at a whole different dynamic, and that will be one way of beginning to change things. When people become aware that decisions are made in those encounters, they will be able to make connections on how those decisions affect them, but they will be able to make connections on all the decisions being made at higher levels.
These afternoon sessions, as you know, are an hour rather than an hour and a half. If there are any questions, you should go to the microphone. Otherwise, I'll
And so
start one. Yes, go on.
could I have 1 minute to talk about the failure and failure on questions? Probably I got it wrong, but I would like to say that what is happening in the classroom and education is that until now, I will say, teachers have not had an easy methodology for teaching students how to ask questions and how to feel safe, because the process that we have developed allows the students to feel safe. They will not fail if they ask the wrong questions, because their questions are the right questions, because that's what they want to know. So therefore, what we have done is to provide a method that is very easy, and teachers have embraced it without a mandate from the schools. Initially, they had a lot of fear in doing this work. They were afraid of not having or failing in answering students' questions. But then they figured out that it was okay, and they put it from the beginning. They let students know, okay, we're going to do some work with the questions, but we're going to do it together. And that way, it's safe for the students, but it's safe also for the teachers who are in a profession that is very demanding.
Let's try and get a couple of quick questions in before our break.
Yeah, my name is Max. I'm not a scientist, but the overarching
Remember that.
sense that I get from the both of what you're trying to do is essentially you're trying to inculcate curiosity. And it's curious to me why the word never came up, and because curiosity is not taught, it's stimulated, right? So if you stimulate people to feel the right to be curious, then you're going to bring out of them whatever their curiosity is. It may be for science or it may be for something else. Secondly, I thought there was an event that occurred on and I don't mean, I'm not highlighting anything, but I found it curious that when the technology went bad, your reaction was, oh, look at me, I'm failing now. when it wasn't you, it was the technology.
I was just joking about
Actually, that's not a joke. Do you know what I'm saying? Because what happens, and I know this because I taught public speaking, which is first of all, that's an oxymoron. You can't teach it. Secondly, the premise of the course, as I taught it, was that you have to fail. And it was impossible. It took me weeks upon weeks upon weeks to get students to embrace just the idea of failing, laughing at themselves, and then getting up and trying again. So, you know, it's the personalization, I think, that has to be addressed in both arenas. And by the way, my question is, and I do have a question, where does the science guy fit in?
What science guy? Who's the science?
You don't know the science guy? Bill Nye?
Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Sarah wants to. Did you want to respond to that first part of it first?
no, I was
Let's
just-
do that and worry about Bill Nye later.
Okay,
Is
because
that all
I
right?
think he's very important in science.
Okay,
No, it was just a really quick thing because I was just thinking about, you know, that you were saying about getting them to fail in front of each other and feeling okay about that. I just think it's really difficult to feel vulnerable in a situation if you don't feel entitled. And
Right.
that's the problem in the classroom half the time, I find, is that you're dealing with people who don't feel entitled and don't feel empowered yet, and asking a question indicates that you're stupid in some way rather than that you're curious. And I don't think there's enough done actually in the culture of education to prevent that feeling. So I think it's, you know, and I also, one thing to add to that, I think it's hard to be curious when you haven't even got the basic things that you need yet. Right?
I absolutely disagree.
Oh,
Okay. We'll take that up in the next session. We have one more quick question if we could get it in.
okay.
Or we can, if you go quick, we can get two. Come on, come on.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm actually a mom, a homeschool teacher, and an SAT tutor. I was actually excited about your findings because I do find that transparency in the classroom, and I'll give you a brief example. When I work with my SAT kids, one of the things that and they were very excited about me, and I was actually surprised. I came through the door one day, and they were like, "She's here," and I looked behind me, and it was only me, and I'm like, okay, something good is happening here. One thing I realized that I did do, to God be the glory, is be transparent with them. I find that we look at transparency in companies and all that, and you know, the social responsibility and all this, but we don't look at transparency in the classroom. And Xiaodong, you mentioned this, that we need to share our stories with our students and let them know that success, you know, we see these stories in the news, and it can be very intimidating to see other people's successes without the process of failure. So thank you so much for your research. God bless.
One more quick one. We'll cut 1 minute off the break. Is that all right? Okay.
Okay, I just quickly wanted to ask, you were talking a lot about students being okay with failure. What about teachers' failure? One of my friends and used to be roommate was a teacher, and she said she was almost afraid of experimentation or trying something new in the classroom because it was this limited opportunity, and there are a lot of constraints on education.
Well, I knew this was going to be a big question.
Sorry.
Anybody have a quick answer for this? A quick comment, or should we take it to the break?
They're so stimulating. I'm so curious. I don't even know where to begin.
Well, that was a very quick answer. Perfect. The perfect answer. Okay, we have a 14-minute break, and we'll reconvene here at 4:15 for our last session of the afternoon. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the speakers and the respondents.